It took 121 seconds. A more than 30-year-long, almost spotless safety record was erased within minutes as the Aerospatiale/BAC Concorde crashed into a hotel just west of Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. But what exactly happened during the time leading up to the flight? Using the final report, I will now tell you the story of the beginning of the end of the Concorde. Stay tuned. Air France Flight 4590 was actually a shorter flight, scheduled to fly from Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, France, to JFK International in New York, United States. Once they landed in New York, the passengers, mainly German but of other nationalities as well, were supposed to board a cruise ship that would take them to Ecuador in South America, making this likely a once-in-a-lifetime trip. There were 100 passengers scheduled for flight, along with 6 cabin crew members and 3 pilots. The aircraft being flown was a legendary Aerospatiale/BAC Concorde, one of the most beautiful aircraft ever constructed and a feat of engineering. The Concorde first flew on March 2, 1969, and during its more than 30-year tenure, it had never suffered a fatal accident. There are a couple of technical aspects of the Concorde that are essential to understand in order for the story to make sense. The Concorde's unique delta wing design allowed it to perform efficiently across subsonic, transonic, and supersonic speeds. However, this wing design required high speeds and a steep angle of attack during takeoff and landing. For comparison, a Boeing 737 typically takes off at around 140 to 150 knots, while the Concorde required approximately 200 knots. These high speeds put enormous stress on the aircraft's tires. During its 30 years of operation, the Concorde had experienced 57 tire bursts. In 12 cases, these incidents caused structural damage, with tire debris striking the underside of the wing. On 6 occasions, the wing tanks were actually penetrated. The most serious of these incidents occurred in 1979 when a Concorde taking off from Washington, D.C., suffered a tire burst that punctured the lower part of the wing and a fuel tank, causing a small fuel leak and hydraulic system damage that prevented the landing gear from retracting. This incident led to a major investigation into the airworthiness of the Concorde, resulting in recommendations for stronger tires and better hydraulic system protection. There was also some discussion about the risk of fire, but investigators concluded that any potential fuel leak caused by tire debris would be small, making the fire risk minimal. The Concorde's fuel system was complex, consisting of 13 tanks, 12 located within the wings and fuselage, and a 13th tank situated at the very rear of the aircraft. This rear tank functioned as a trim tank, allowing pilots to shift fuel to adjust the aircraft's center of gravity, which was crucial for stability, particularly during takeoff. The aircraft was powered by 4 Olympus twin-spool turbojet engines, positioned beneath the delta wings just behind the main landing gear. These engines featured variable air intakes for supersonic flight and secondary intakes below them, an important detail in this story. Each engine was also equipped with afterburners, providing an extra 18% thrust during takeoff. On July 25, 2000, Flight 4590 was set to depart, but there were already problems before takeoff. Another Concorde had originally been scheduled for flight, but a last-minute aircraft swap introduced complications. The new aircraft had a technical issue. One of its thrust reversers was inoperative. While this did not ground the aircraft, it imposed a performance penalty that might require a fuel stop en route. Additionally, a glitch in Air France's system caused a mismatch between passenger check-ins and luggage records. The final load sheet did not account for 19 extra bags, increasing the aircraft weight. At 1,400 hours Universal Time Coordinated, 1,600 hours local time in Paris, the flight crew, consisting of an experienced captain, first officer, and flight engineer, began their pre-flight checks. The aircraft was loaded with 95 tons of fuel, bringing it close to its maximum takeoff weight. The crew calculated their takeoff speeds: V1 decision speed at 150 knots, VR rotation speed at 198 knots, and V2 engine out climb speed at 220 knots. At 14:25 Universal Time Coordinated, the aircraft was ready for departure. The engines were started sequentially: 3, 2, 4, and finally 1. The crew taxied toward runway 26 right, the longest runway at Charles de Gaulle Airport. Just before